Skateboarding and mental health. Is it the most cliched video by a YouTuber on the skateboard niche? Perhaps, but this one I guarantee you guys is going to be a little bit different. Skateboarding for me is a very important coping outlet for me as a way to deal with my own mental health. It's something I've had struggles with in the past throughout my life, and skateboarding is just such a great outlet. There are so many positive attributes that a lot of YouTubers have talked about already. Where this video is a little bit different is that I want to touch upon some things that I've started to notice that while there are a lot of positives, I think there are also some negatives about leaning too heavily on skateboarding as your main coping strategy for dealing with issues with your mental health. Now, we're going to start by looking at some skateboarding because I was able to channel some of those negative emotions into my determination to try and get a trick done. I wanted to do a trick that I've never seen anybody do on a surf skate before, to kickflip into a grind. And I was able to use my determination, my resilience, some of those strategies that I've picked up from skateboarding to get that done this weekend. So we're going to look at some of the attempts along the way and the make. And then we'll talk about some of the pros and cons about relying on skateboarding or surf skating as a means of dealing with some of the challenges you might face with your own mental health. Let's get into it. So last week at home, at work, with friends, with family, dealing with the loss of my grandfather, there were just a lot of things that were adding up and not making me feel great. And sometimes when I get that way, being able to put my attention and mindfulness on focusing on getting something done, like a skateboard trick, is a really good way to channel that energy into something that feels productive to me. This is my third night trying this trick, and I'm only showing the close calls, not the ones that were wildly off. And I'm someone who's usually pretty calm and collected, so when you see me get to this point, you know that I am getting into the orange zone. I'm not great at ollieing backside into grind, so the next day I went to a different spot and just practiced ollieing into a backside grind without the kickflip. Got that. I think that helped. So I came back the next morning on a day when I was feeling particularly bad, and thought that this was a good way to get my mind off of other things that were going on in my life and try and do it. I told myself I was not going to come back today until I landed this trick. I actually forgot my water on a day when it was 33 degrees Celsius out, so this was a big commitment, but I knew that I could do it. I was getting so close, so frustratingly close, that sometimes when you're not getting it and you're that close, it can actually maybe lead to a deterioration of mental health rather than a productive use of your time or productive use of your energy. But I kept at it, and eventually I got to the point where I said, okay, 3 more tries. And that was my third try. I told myself you can take 2 more to get up to 5, and then this happened. It was almost like when I landed my first tray flip, where I kind of couldn't believe that I was rolling away. Now, if you look closely, I didn't actually land in a 50-50. My back trucks were on top of the curb, so it's called a low-C grind when you do that. Not what I was going for, but after 4 days of attempts, I'm gonna take it. So being able to channel that energy into something positive, an accomplishment, a sense of perseverance was so important to me. It helped move me probably a whole notch in terms of where I was on the mental health spectrum. Now, there are a lot of positives that come from skateboarding, and let's talk through some of those right now. And we'll follow that up with talking about some of the other end of the spectrum, about some of the potential negatives about leaning on skateboarding or surf skating as your tool for dealing with your own mental health. So let's talk about benefits, and the first one is reducing stress and anxiety. If you skate, you know that when you are locked into a trick battle, you don't have room to think about other things. You're thinking about your speed, your foot positioning, your setup, your pop. There's so many things you need to think about that you can't think of any of those negative things. You're concentrated on what you're trying to accomplish. And in doing that, by the end of the session, the original stress and anxiety that you might have been feeling going into it has been reduced overall. A huge one that needs to be mentioned is resilience and perseverance. Because is there anyone in the world more resilient and perseverant than skaters? We will try things over and over again. I think when I landed my first tray flip, I tried at least 10,000 of them before getting it. This can translate into other areas of life, like your mental health. So, learning to be resilient, learning to accept that not everything's going to be a success, that you might have to go through a lot of failure before achieving what you want. That's a really important life lesson that can you take from your skateboarding and apply to other areas of your life, which is so important. Next one is community. This is so essential to supporting our mental health, is the feeling that we belong, that we have a place. And communities at skate parks are almost like a second family. And it's interesting because since I started skating, I have friends that range in age from like 8 years old to 50 years old, everyone in between, different walks of life. Feeling that you're part of that community is really supportive and helpful in having good, solid mental health. When we skateboard, we're getting physical activity, usually outdoors, and that is actually creating chemical messages that go to our brain that make us feel better. So when you're doing exercise outside, it's giving signals to your brain that are actually going to make you feel better and change your mood. So, skateboarding obviously has a lot of really positive impacts on mental health. But I want to take some time to talk about some of the drawbacks of leaning primarily or relying only on skateboarding as your support system for maintaining your own mental health. So, let's talk about some of those drawbacks. So, self criticism and perfectionism is definitely one that I'm guilty of. You even saw it in this video. The fact that my back trucks didn't get on the curb when I did that trick that nobody has ever done on a surf skate before, I still couldn't help but look at the negative. So, it's something that can happen in our industry and something that we can counter, but to be aware of. The next one is comparison and self doubt. And especially in the age of social media, comparing ourselves to others is a big source of what can create issues with low confidence, self doubt, feelings of inadequacy. If we're looking at other people and the way they progress, like how long they've been skating and how far they're progressing, comparing ourselves to them, it can create that feeling that why are they getting better? Why can they land this when I can't? Why do they have this many followers while I only have this many? It can really get into your head and have impacts on your mental health. The next one is frustration and anger. And you saw this come out from me, which is pretty rare, but it does happen sometimes. When we struggle to land something after tons of attempts, or if you feel like you've reached kind of a plateau in your progression where you can do everything you can already do well, but everything you can't do feels far away, it can lead to a lot of frustration and a sense of burnout, and that can be detrimental to your mental health. All right, this last one is a sensitive matter and something that I think needs to be addressed because skateboarding for people like me who haven't been officially diagnosed, but I think I do have ADHD. I do tend to latch on to things and get a bit obsessive about them, and skateboarding or surf skating is the most recent one. It can become almost like an addiction when it gets to the point where we have rain or snow and I can't get outside and skate. I definitely feel it in my core, in my bones. Like I feel those withdrawal symptoms, like as if I were addicted to narcotics or something, and I can't skate, and it just makes me feel jittery and makes me feel uneasy. So, as good as skateboarding is, as many good things as there are about it, we have to be careful to use it in moderation and not rely completely on it as our only source of positivity, because there are going to be times when you can't do it, where you can't get the sessions that you want. and then you feel kind of that emptiness of not being able to have it. So being able to have other support systems is really important to avoid falling into that trap of skateboarding being your only kind of support net to support your mental health. At the end of the day, what does this mean? I am truly thankful to have rediscovered skateboarding during the pandemic. It has been so crucial to help me get through some of the tough times that have come from the isolation, from being home with my kids during lockdowns and things like that, to carrying that through to now as I'm returning to getting into more social situations where I tend to be a little bit more introverted. Skateboarding has been so helpful, but I think it's important to recognize that all of us go through our own struggles, and sometimes just skateboarding is not going to be enough. There's stigma associated with mental health, and it is okay to sometimes not be okay. It is okay to reach out for help. It's okay to look beyond just going out and skating. So I think skateboarding can be an important piece of the puzzle when you're trying to take care of yourself. But I want to encourage you to not just close your mind to other options. Reach out for help, talk to a friend, talk to a support network. If you have access through your work systems to talk to a therapist or something like that, there's no harm in doing that. There's nothing to be ashamed of in doing that. It's important to take care of ourselves. We're going to be our best both as skaters and in our home lives, in our family lives, in our lives with our friends and coworkers, if we can look after our mental health and make sure that we're staying as close to the green as possible. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope you found it somewhat entertaining to see me struggle through that trick and actually get it. And to give some thought to whether you're leaning too much on skateboarding for your mental health, or if you should consider some other options that might help support it in other ways. Thanks for watching, guys.